Hello and welcome everybody. Today we're going to continue to work on our concept art here. Now, in the last video I drew up 6 quick heads, like quick sketches, nothing too important or drastic. And I'm just going to take one of them and I'm going to develop a body for them. And this is something that I'll usually do is draw out some faces and then think, okay, what would look cool or what would be a cool bad guy here? Um, so again, I'm still sticking with my alien theme, my robot theme, and I'm still thinking, how do I make this guy a zombie? Now, the more I think about it, the more I want this guy to be a mental zombie, but not necessarily a physical zombie. So he's more of a, he's brainless or brain dead, but he's still, alive. He's still a living creature. And here's my rough sketch here. Now, in the last video, I included the final draft for this with like a purple, and I think he had like blue here. I don't care about those colors. I'm not married to them, so it doesn't matter. And so I don't get distracted by them. I chose to put it into this kind of this halftone, eight shades of gray. There's a setting on this program for 8-bit. So it's like different colors of gray and black and white. So I'm just committing to this so I can see the basic outlines, the basic features of this creature without committing to anything specific. Now, again, thinking about alien and robot, I came up with some rules that I want to go over here. The more I look at this guy, the more I think, instead of making him a scrawny little thing, maybe I can make him like Bane from Batman. That could be interesting, like a big kind of buff brainless guy. So again, brainless, adding to that zombie feeling, kind of like Frankenstein's monster again. So maybe he's hunched over, he's brainless, like he's just controlled by something else, that kind of a thing. And then very worn down or worn out, kind of has this vibe of abandonment. So he's not well taken care of. Now, so let's begin. We're going to start off by doing a rough sketch. As you can see, if I zoom out, it made the 8-tone a lot nicer. It doesn't like when I zoom in too much. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this real quick. Remember some of these features. We have these tubings, some metal pieces here, and one more over here. And then we have the big forehead and the long sloping skull. And then I think here I made him kind of scrawny, but now I'm thinking maybe I should make him kind of bulky. That might be pretty cool. So right now what I'm doing is I'm going to lay out the basic shapes that will create the silhouette of the character. So I'm using simple shapes, triangles, trapezoids, all that kind of stuff to try to create these simple shapes and create a nice silhouette, something that's cool to look at. If we pretend this was the shadow, would the shadow be menacing or cool to look at? And once I have the basic silhouette down, I start blocking out some of the key features of the character, like the chest and the abdomen, and that's what I'm doing there. That's quite nice. I kind of like this. So as a silhouette, this kind of it's a pretty good foundation right now. This is something we can work with, definitely. And you guys can see here, okay, well, if I throw down a ground plane, maybe somewhere back here behind his legs, and I can never do it straight, but whatever. And throw down some shadow here. There we go. Now we can see, okay, this guy's weighted. This leg should be maybe a little bit more firm, maybe a little bit more forward or bigger, and maybe this one's in the background or something. Okay, so during this section, what I'm going to look at is I was very satisfied with my silhouette, so I decided to go in and block off some areas. And the whole purpose of this was to get some anatomy going. So you can see me there tracing out the muscles of the arm, the basic arm shapes. I haven't decided what to do with the hands, so I kind of wrote myself a note. Maybe I want to do some claws. I also trace out the lower chest, the abdomen, the obliques, some simple muscles of the leg, the one that overhangs over the knee. I found that one to be the most critical muscle for getting a very massive leg going. And I shade out the back to show that that other leg is in the background. So it's kind of as if this monster is stepping forward. Give it a little bit more of that menacing look. Now I'm going in and filling out the skull, and that should be that. Okay, so we got some basic idea here. Now I can go in and I'm going to lower the opacity on this. And I'm actually going to make this one a little bit darker. I chose a color that's a little bit too bright. So I'm just going to bring this down a bit. Perfect. Making it a little bit darker always helps. Alright, now what you're going to see me do is, and I sped this up, I'm going to go in and make some basic decisions on costume. So I decided to give him some old worn out pants, and I'm being very loose with my lines. You can see I'm throwing down a ton of lines, and then I'm not decided on what I want to do with the feet quite yet and the bottom half of the legs, so I just kind of left it blocky, maybe give him some metal there or something. And then I know I want to have a nice big chest plate, so I'm giving it some supports and then forming out the shape of the chest plate. And my idea here was, okay, I'm going to try to give him like a Bane look, because if I keep the purple and green, it'll kind of look like the Hulk. So I'm trying to mix up a couple of ideas. Draw out the head, draw out the same basic features as the drawing above it. And I'll never get it exactly the same, but as long as the ideas are conveyed. And the tubing is really important for me, so I'm going to decide real quick that I want a lot of tubing on this guy, and I imagine that that's his blood or his life support system, maybe attached to some pack on his back, so it becomes a key part of this creature. And you see there I decided not to do the hands just yet. So now what I'm doing is I turn off the bottom layer because it was getting too busy, and I'm going to go in and add some details like these tubes, and use my eraser to erase the inner parts of the tube to make sure that they're solid. And I'm going for an asymmetrical look, but I still want it to be balanced. So you can see that I'll have two tubes on the top on one side, and then kind of like a bigger tube on the other side, and a couple on the bottom. Try to give this creature a balanced look while still keeping everything fresh. Do I want any tubes on his legs? I don't think so. I think since this is a chest plate, and I'll add some lines here. And the way I do like metal lines is I'm starting to do them different on both sides so that it adds some style. So it's not just like, this and then that same pattern over here. And maybe I'll have his legs actually be armored. So something like that, where it has like a design of some sort, and then some pieces here, and then something like that, to where his legs are armored. And then we have like the really loose, kind of worn down pants. Maybe these will be leather. Maybe I'll make them black, actually. That might be pretty cool, like kind of like trash bag looking legs. And give them a lot of lines. And I'm just doing this to show that this is not, this is not metal. This is just cloth, and that's just for me. When I clean it up, I will definitely not give it this many lines. It'll be way too busy, way too gross. Okay, so here's my basics of this character. It's a very rough sketch. Let me add some hands actually. So I'm gonna actually try to go for these claws and maybe something like that. So how did I do that? Like this, and maybe something like that. Kind of make them a little bit symmetrical. After all, they are fingers. I'll clean it up later. Alright, so now I'm beginning the line work, and this is where it starts to get tricky, because I've thrown down some rough ideas, but I haven't really thrown down something solid. So you're going to see me really struggle a little bit to get everything off the ground. This is usually the hardest part when it comes to doing the comic or doing the illustration at this point. I find that getting the sketch down and getting the ideas down is the best part, and then after that comes probably the hardest part, which is doing the line work and cleaning everything up. It's not as much fun as sketching it all out, but it is really rewarding in the end. Excuse me, I'm stretching. It's really rewarding in the end. So it can be really time consuming, but it pays off because you see your final product and you know what you're gunning for, you know what it looks like, and you can clearly tell whether or not it's going to be a good product or a bad product. So as you can see, I'm spending way too much time on the head, but other than that, This is probably the place that takes me the longest, just because I'm trying to copy that image. If I were to redo it by myself with no image, it would probably be a lot quicker. So that's something to keep in mind here. Oftentimes when we're trying to copy something, we get so lost in the details that we forget the big picture, which is to convey the idea of the image. This is a concept piece. It shouldn't, doesn't need to be finalized. It could be edited and reworked. But if you spend too much time on a certain angle, you can really get married to that angle, and then when someone tells you, hey, maybe you should change this, you can get kind of defensive. So that's something that I'm trying to work on, is be a little bit looser, be a little bit quicker. But as you can see now, I'm working on the body, getting the structure right. I wasn't too happy with the way the head looks placed on the body. I think I could have done a better job on that. Maybe if I would have brought it down a little bit more, maybe it would have looked more hunched over. That would have been nice. But as it stands, it's as if the creature is hunched over, but his head is straight up. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what I see when I look at it. So I lowered the opacity there because I had forgotten to do so earlier, and I was wondering why I was having a hard time visualizing my lines. But as for line work, I always say you don't want to trace, you want to use those as guides. And you can see I'm really doing many lines over and over and over until I get the one that really sets in with me. And I'm still trying to be loose with it, trying not to be too much of a stickler as to what I want with my lines, but keep them as guides, keep them there as markers. As for the arm, I don't go over the inner muscle detail, just because I don't want him to look cut and buff like superhero. I want him to kind of look brutish, kind of like big and bulky, but not necessarily buff. So, I gave him kind of muscles, but not really, the type of muscles that a superhero would have. And the arm, you see I added a band there. I kind of wanted it to be straight onto his skin, but I realized probably not too efficient in terms of design. So maybe have a band there and have the arm continue that theme of asymmetrical design throughout the creature. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, and as for these proportions, again, I'm trying to make him bulky but not cut. So he's got a lot of meat, he's got a lot of mass, it's kind of compressed into his chest plate, but he's not necessarily cut in the sense that, he doesn't go to the gym and work out every day. And I got his claws to finally work and look nice, and I was really happy with that. And here, these pants, I really ripped them up. I really went all the way with the Hulk idea. And I took down some of those lines. You see, it's very, very busy as it is, so I decided to just do a few of those lines to showcase the stretchiness of the cloth, but not go overboard with those lines. And I think as it stands, I went way too heavy on the lines. I should have stopped there, but I kept going, which is a big mistake for many artists that I know, is that they just keep going, and it's knowing when to stop. That's the hardest part. The hands, I'm kind of satisfied with the way they look. They're kind of small, long-fingered, and look like claws, and I kind of like that. I kind of like the alien feel to the hands, where they could still grasp a weapon, but they look foreign. So I was very happy with that, and I think I wrote myself a note. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, I was very happy with the way the hands looked. And then I went on to work on the feet, and originally I wanted to do Mega Man style shoes with the big circular pad on the inside, but I didn't like it. So quickly I deleted it, and I decided to throw in some design on the foot, on the shoe, or on the calf. And excuse me, that's not the calf, that's the front part. I forgot what it's called. And I kind of like the way it looks. It's simple. It goes with the vented theme of everything else. And I just took it from there and tried to keep my proportions, keep my angle, and keep everything steady from that point. So I was kind of satisfied with the way overall the creature looked. Now at this point, what I started to do was go in and add details. So I took out the lines underneath my drawing here, my sketch, and I went in and added some chest plate stuff. And the way I've been doing that is trying to be asymmetrical with everything, not try to be perfect with everything. So I keep my lines loose and keep them very asymmetrical. Lines can be different. There are some areas where I'll keep the lines the same just because they show form. But when it comes to like chest plate and metal pieces, I try to, it looks more futuristic and kind of more alien, more cool if the lines are asymmetrical. Then I went in and I added some bumpy features and bumpy textures to my alien. I kind of tried to give him like a crocodile skin. At this point I was thinking the Hulk meets Bane meets Frankenstein's monster meets Killer Croc. So it's a mix of, superhero and supervillain characters. You get the bumpy texture of Croc's skin, the bulkiness of the Hulk, and then you get the disposition and the stance of Bane, and you mix it with the brainless or brain dead feel of Frankenstein's monster. So I like the way it looks. I definitely do. So at this point, I decided I went back and I added a thicker outline to my silhouette. So all I did was grab a thicker pen and trace the outer area. So I kept all the inner lines the same and traced the outer area. You can kind of see it. I turned everything to blue so that I can add a shadow layer, and I decided to make the light coming from the left side of the screen here, kind of left and in front of the screen a little bit. So we get kind of like a nice contrast of light, and add some thick shadows to the right side of my character. And the whole point of this is to add form, continue to show form of the character. Never just add shadow to add shadow. Shadow works because shadow reflects form, and that's something that I've been struggling to learn and to cement in my head. But the more I try it, the more I practice it, the better I get, and that's good. That's always good. That's improvement. So I started adding some shadow, and I'm thinking consciously about where my reflective surfaces are, where light will be reflected from the back, because light reflects everywhere. And so I'm just adding some light shadow. I'm not going too heavy because I'm also going to color this creature in. I decided at this point I should color it. So I kept having a problem there, but the idea behind this is the shadow really will make the creature pop, and the dark outline around the creature will make him stand out from the background. And that's kind of something that's used a lot in comic books and in manga, is to use those thick outlines on the characters to have them pop out of the page. And I'm sure that at this point you're wondering, oh wow, how do you know where to cast the shadows? Well, the chest plate goes on top of the chest, so to show that it's not a part of the chest or melted into the chest, I like to add like a thicker shadow along it, to show that it's kind of resting on top. And I try to just think like, where would the folds be? Where would the light never hit? Probably wouldn't hit that back finger. Some of the folds on the pants would probably never be touched. That kind of stuff, simple stuff like that. And that's the overall idea of all of this. One last thing to say about shadow is that shadow adds form, and I can't stress that enough. And as you can see here, I'm trying to cast some shadow onto the creature based on where the hoses are, where the folds are of the skin, and everything of that sort. And here I'm going to go into the pants and really think, where are the folds pointing away from the light, and where are the folds pointing into the light? So these back folds here that are kind of hidden, those probably won't get a lot of light, so I'll go ahead and shade those in. Now, if this was a really heavy black and white illustration, I'd probably be a lot heavier with my shadow. But as it stands, I'm going to go back and add color. So I decided to keep the shadows minimal and use my color gradients to really showcase the form of the creature. So I'm just adding some simple shadows here. The thickest one, I think, is this one on the foot, and that's because that's pointing away. It's angled away from the light, so it'll probably be the darkest part of the character. Alright, at this point what I started doing is coloring, and I cheated a bit in the video. I colored first, then I did the shadow, but for the purpose of this video I showed the shadow layer first because usually that's how I would do things. I got distracted and I just started coloring for some reason. So I just went in and started throwing in purples and really not caring about lines and am I in or out of the line. What I should have done was probably use my magic wand tool or the selection tool to make sure that I can only paint inside certain areas. But I forgot to do that as well. It was just a long night. But you can see there I'm just throwing in some colors, seeing how they look, and just going in and filling in the big spaces. And I'm not worried too much about the details yet. I do spend a little bit of time going in and filling in the detailed areas because since this is on a raster layer, it gets a little pixeled. Since I'm using lower DPI, it's also getting a little pixeled. But because of the video, I can't use a higher DPI for my images. So it's a little bit of a hassle, but it's alright. And I'm just experimenting with colors here and seeing what I like and what I don't. And you'll see that in the end, I switch out those oranges for grays, as you can see here, and I feel that that complements, those colors are more complementary to each other, a little bit nicer. And after this, I start adding some form-fitting shadows by basically taking my eyedropper, selecting the purple, and then lowering the hue, so I get a darker hue on my purple, and that'll be my shadowed area. And I'm just going in and the areas that are pulling away from the light, those will become darker. And the ones that are going to pull toward the light will become a little bit brighter. But we'll see that in a little while. Again, under the chest plate, I do add some shadow just because of the fact that, you know, we get some nice, some nice weight on that creature and on that plate. So having added those shadows, I'm now going into the pants. And I'm going to do the shadows for the pants, and I'm just using a pen to outline the areas that I want to shadow in, and then I'm going to use the fill tool to fill those in. And when I put too much, I go back and I delete areas, or I fill in with the original color just to make it pop out a bit. Now because that leg is pulling back, it's going to be a lot darker than the other leg, which is standing forward. Remember that I said that the light was coming in front and to the left of the screen. So it's kind of nice to give that form-fitting feel to everything. So I added a little bit of darkness and light here to the chest plate as well, just making sure that everything was working smoothly. So at this point I started adding in some highlights, and all I did was grab my midtone and crank up the hue, and that by nature of the way the colors work, it'll make it look like a highlight, and you know it works fairly well. And so I just did that to all the parts. I decided to give a highlight to the area where the light source would hit strongest, and since our creature is supposed to be round, I gave it to about a third of the way into the creature. So if we take from the left side of the creature here, we count a third of the way in, and that would be where like the light would hit the strongest for this particular light source. And the way I know to do that is just by experimenting and figuring stuff out. So there's no right or wrong way, just keep trying, keep experimenting. So now that all my hues are in, it looks rather nice. I kind of like it. I think the next step that I did was I made it a little bit bigger and added in my shadow again, so you can see that it really makes the light areas pop, and it really makes the dark areas much more darker, and it gives a good contrast as well. And I repositioned my figure and changed the proportions. I noticed he was a bit too wide, so I gave him a little bit more of a tall feel and kind of stretched him out a bit. I kind of like the way that looked, so I kept it there. And it's important to take a step back, look at your drawing, come back to it, and work on it from there. So once I did all that, I recentered it onto the page, and then I started framing my page, give it kind of a background. And the way I did that was to simply add some color and add a shadow underneath my creature. And because the light source is coming sort of to the left, I added the shadow to the right. And really I should have added the shadow to the right and back, but I added it to the right and a little bit forward, which was not especially good, but hey, it works, so that's okay. Now here I zoom out the creature and I'm just looking to see how the shadows look, how the colors look. Are they too saturated? And I'm just trying to get everything to look nice but not distract from the creature. So I desaturate the colors a little bit more, and as you can see, the creature starts looking kind of nice. So hopefully this concept piece helped you guys, and you guys can get creative on your own ideas. So good luck, and I'll see you soon.